It's an interesting time in history to be a conservative rabbi, especially in Los Angeles. Probably most of us are aware that the campus of the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, where I was ordained, moved from Mulholland Drive in Bel Air to the corner of South Beverly and West Olympic in Beverly Hills. Probably many of us are aware that the school has paused admissions of new students in the coming year, as the president of American Jewish University, of which Ziegler is part, will lead a revisioning and overhaul of the current program in response to the changing landscape of Jewish life in our communities today. Here, in our lovely Hamish community, in our beautiful sanctuary, it can seem that Jewish life and Jewish community is the same as it ever was. But beyond these walls, in conversation with my colleagues, I am reminded and we are aware that things continue to change. And we're all working together to try to figure things out, to navigate this change as we continue to lead and care for our communities. Perhaps some of us have heard of the Atra Rabbinic Study, published in November 2025, a comprehensive review of all non-Haredi rabbis in the United States. This study has, by and large, been well received and well respected by the broader Jewish community. This rabbinic organization, Atra, is about 10 years old, and it grew out of the Hillel program on college campuses. I was one of the many rabbis interviewed for this study, and I found myself very intrigued by the work that Atra is doing. I was offered an opportunity to apply for a new learning cohort in their program, and I did so eagerly, and I was accepted into their Center for Applied Torah. I've been learning with this group now for a couple of months, and the class will continue for a few months more. This approach that Atra has is very interesting. If I could sum it up in one sentence, I'd say, when providing the needs for your community, be open to the idea that what people need isn't what you'd expect. In other words, I might think I know what our community needs based on my own past experiences or based on our community's history, but I shouldn't make assumptions. Instead, I should ask, and I should be open to receiving answers that I couldn't have imagined. So I've been working on this class, of course, in my ample rabbinic free time. I wanted to share a little bit about all this with you today because, and since, the topic of this learning cohort is death and dying. Here's the thing. Death and dying are not exactly popular topics for broad discussion, but we all know funerals and Shiva are essential to the work of a rabbi. So the question of the class, the question that encompasses my learning and the learning of all my colleagues in this cohort is, how can we best provide for the needs of our communities in this regard? How can we best support our communities, individuals, and families through this life cycle moment? Okay, so taking Atra's approach, applying it to this question, my first task was to find a way to ask my community what our needs are and to be open to receiving whatever answers I received, even if they didn't match my expectations. This has been an extremely interesting process and more challenging than I would have thought. To open the door to these conversations, the learning cohort had each individual rabbi articulate a question that speaks to us individually so we could use our own words to start these conversations. So here's my question that I've kept in mind throughout these conversations I've had in our community. How can death and dying be an opportunity for healing and growth? Now, of course, as I had conversations with members of our community, I learned more and more how my own question was inseparable from my personal experience. For me, the loss of my father opened up doors to my own healing and growth that I could never have imagined. And for our community, as I've officiated funerals, I've seen conversations and eulogies expressed unparalleled love and build bridges to healthy closure, an essentially important and ongoing remembrance. Of course, there's the pain of loss. That's never going away. But there are pieces to this grief journey that are, or can be, hidden gifts. At least that's what I thought. That's how I saw it from my limited perspective through my own biased lens. Now it was my job to begin conversations from my perspective and then step back and truly listen to the answers I was receiving, resisting the almost magnetic temptation to curate what I heard into what I wanted it to be. So here's what I heard. The first, and I think loudest category of feedback, didn't address my personal question at all, but it communicated a clear message. We who are living should do more, and need to do more to prepare for our own dying. This can take a variety of forms. From the medical community, we have advanced directives, instructions to our families about our desires for treatment in certain medical situations. From the spiritual or religious community, we have the ethical will, instructions to our families about how we want them to live their lives based on what we have learned and what we want to teach them. And from professionals in the field of death and dying, rabbis, doctors, social workers, death doulas, we have a heartfelt and persistent urging to think more about death, to talk more about death, especially with our families, so that we can make our wishes known, and so we can open ourselves up to conversations that can really only be had when the end of life is imminent. So I have to say, I was not expecting that feedback. And at first, I really didn't know what to do with it. So here's the second category of feedback. It also didn't address my question, and interestingly, it's related to the first. Its message, again communicated with clarity. The rabbi should tell the community that we who are living should do more and need to do more to prepare for our own dying. Simply put, the rabbi should talk about death more. And the rabbi should take opportunities like Yizkor sermons or Torah parshas that mention death to pass along these instructions. Well, I was a bit more prepared for this feedback. Hearing from people the rabbi should do this or that on behalf of the community is certainly something I've heard before. Over time, hearing this in a variety of situations, I've learned what it means is that the thing that the rabbi should do on behalf of the community is difficult and important. Whatever it is, the thing surely needs to be done, but for whatever reasons, we need someone else to do it for us. It's a ask for help. It's a request for help. So the third and final category of feedback did address my question a bit more directly, but 3 for 3 led in a direction I could not have predicted. As we talked about death and dying as an opportunity for healing and growth, we began talking about remembering. We began talking about legacy, about specific ways a community could not just remember, but also honor our loved ones who are no longer alive. And from these conversations emerged the most concrete and actionable ask. As I reflected on all the conversations I had, I was surprised to start noticing it was a common thread. It turns out we in our community want to show up for one another in our moments of loss. We want to help make a Shiva minyan. We want to hear eulogies for each other's loved ones. We want to bring a platter of food to a meal of condolence. We want to be there to support our beloved community members in that moment of loss. And that wanting to show up comes from a place of deep love, from a place of essential community. And it turns out, this feedback connected to me on a very personal level. I've shared this with our community before. You know this about me and about my family. When my father died, there was no plan. My family isn't religious. My father was not religious. Our immediate arrangements were just a close family. But my sister felt very strongly about planning an event in our dad's honor. She didn't want it to be a memorial, so we had to finesse the wording, but she did want to have an event for the community and all the extended family. So it took a few months, the plans were made, the work was done, and on the day itself, people started to show up. It was profound. What I learned that day was not only that my sister needed to do this for herself and for our family and to honor her relationship with our dad, I learned that the community and the family needed it too. And the space that we all made together was deeply connecting, was deeply healing. It's still amazing to look at the photos from the event of my dad's siblings and my mom's siblings standing side by side. And so many people came from the community who I had never met before. I learned that day that the loss of my dad wasn't just a loss for me. It was a loss for people who I had never even met. And those people wanted to be with me and to remember together. So all this learning is so deep, it's so personal. And since it is practically impossible to step back from our own experiences, practically impossible for me to step back from my own experiences, it is so important to continue making the effort to do so, to continue to gather with my rabbinic colleagues so we can encourage one another to do so, to hold one another accountable. We know that the upshot here, the message that Atra is trying to convey to us rabbis, is that when we serve our communities, we should check in with them and ask them what they need, that we should be open to their needs being outside the bounds of what we might think or expect. And in doing so, we can find that what we ourselves have been thinking might not have been on the right track. So at least today, from my learning so far, at least what I feel I know right now, it seems that what we don't necessarily need is a heavy-handed direction to think and talk more about death. We don't need a series of workshops on ethical wills and advanced directives. We don't need the rabbi to be the person holding us accountable for completing these tasks. But perhaps we do need some gentle periodic reminders that these resources exist, that I, as the rabbi of the community, am always available to help navigate them. And if it's too inconvenient or weird to talk to me about it, you can just Google it. You can handle it more privately if that's what you prefer, and that's very, very okay. And if you don't want to think about it, if you don't want to talk about it, you're probably in the majority of people. To those of us who find themselves in that space, I would just say, if you ever change your mind, if you ever do want to think about it or talk about it, those resources are here for you, and we don't need to push or force anything. And from my learning so far today, from listening with an open mind and heart to all of you, what I have learned is how much you all care about showing up for one another. I have learned from your feedback, and I know from my own experience, that when one of our loved ones reaches the end of their life, this community is waiting at the door with a suitcase of Shiva Minyan Sidurim, a platter of bagels, and we want to be invited in. Because this loss impacts us, all of us, because we're a community, and that's what community means. For so many moments in life, from birth to funeral, from wedding to bar mitzvah, healing and growth can come almost magically when we give ourselves the gift of showing up, when we give ourselves the gift of allowing others to show up for us. And we know that today, we feel that today, as we have all showed up for one another and for our loved ones on this day of Yizkor, on this day of remembrance. May we all be blessed with sweet memories, loving memories of those we have lost, and may those memories take us gently through the closing hours of our Passover holiday. Chag Sameach.